Weaknesses, especially the principle of two weaknesses. A weakness is a square which cannot be defended by a friendly pawn. Of course, it could also be a pawn standing on this weak square, which then itself is a weakness. So, yeah, what to do with white in Magnus Carlsen, Fabiano Caruana? Black has a weakness on b6, a weak pawn, which cannot be defended by a black pawn anymore, and on f7 on h6. And g6 is some kind of tactical weakness, maybe, because white attacks it twice and it is defended twice. But okay, this is a slightly different approach, of course. Yeah, but okay, this one weakness on b6 can be defended by Caruana's army relatively comfortably. And yeah, this is often the case, that one weakness can be defended. So the principle of two weaknesses is extremely important in endgames, usually, and in the game in general. Rook b1. Often the attacker can shift his forces more easily than than the defender. So white's rook now pressurizes both wings in a way, because rook h1 can be played very quickly. And okay, white's king can invade on the weak light squares of the queen side. There the whole color complex of light squares is weak. And such weaknesses are very precarious often, but it is not good to have so large weak color complexes. While on the other hand, it could also be said that Magnus Carlsen also has some weaknesses, and that would not be wrong, but black cannot exploit them. And a weakness that cannot be exploited is no weakness. This is also a guideline. And yeah, the c3 is defended very well by the bishop, and the bishop is not only passive, it is also very, very active. It pressurizes b6 weakness and the weak squares on black's king side. And it can maybe also attack the h6 quite quickly. While black's bishop is mostly passive. Okay, it has to protect the b6, but it cannot... Okay, but it cannot be active easily. It cannot be activated easily. So this is also important. A weakness which cannot be exploited is no weakness, and this, of course, also must be shown by concrete calculation. And so here the following variation is important. Now black tries to use the weakness and attack it, but Magnus has calculated that it's no threat because the invasion of his king is more important. And this really is amazing. I don't know how Magnus does it, but somehow he always manages to dominate the enemy army. And here, black would lose the exchange first and the game later, of course. Here in this position, white always wins. Now the reason is that he is much more active than black. And this is also one disadvantage of having to defend weaknesses passively. This may lead in general to passivity of the whole position, and then there may be other ways for the attacker to transform this advantage like this here into winning due to more active forces. And white wins according to the computer, but Magnus has seen it, I don't doubt that, and here white would win immediately. Okay. So the principle of two weaknesses is extremely important. Create a second weakness, and a weakness that cannot be exploited is no weakness. And weak color complexes should be avoided, or it must be... Then great care is necessary. And here white's king always threatens to invade on the light squares of the queen side. This in a way also what happened in the game. now Magnus played rook h1, playing the trump card. He doesn't threaten to take the h6 directly due to g takes f5 check, but the rook now works on the king side and the king on the queen side, and this overloads black defense in the long run. In any case, in all cases. g5 might be in this case more tenacious, but it doesn't matter. It is lost. Oh, yeah, and okay, what was the reason here? White to move. How did Magnus now start the final combination? f6, and this breaks the coordination and harmony of the defensive forces for good, and now it's over. Because the black's king is too far away from the queen side. Magnus bishop doesn't have the queening square of the a pawn, but it is not important as the c pawn will win. Yeah. c5 would be a draw, but bishop b4 and then advancing the pawns, and after some further move, so Magnus Carlsen converted. But okay, the most important point I want to make is that the principle of two weaknesses is extremely important in the endgame, so try to create a second weakness, and if there is already a second weakness, then try to use your forces in a way that you can use your greater mobility on both wings. First, force the defender into passivity, and then activate your redistribute your forces so that the defense will be overloaded, and Magnus did this here in exemplary fashion. His rook attacks now. He changed roles in some way. His rook now attacks and plays on the king side, and his king on the queen side, and this will overload. This overloaded Caruana's defense.